let's continue. I'm closing our series tonight. I'm closing our series on the prophetic. I think it's been amazing. I wanted to close on the office of the prophet, but because of where we are, and because y'all prayed that we would stay in prayer much longer than I initially intended, we got behind a little bit. So I want to get through this prophetic series. This will be week 6. All right, is that good? I think that's a good solid foundation. We did 6 weeks of laying foundation for prophetic ministry, prophetic conduct, prophetic integrity, and ethics for handling divine information, divine communication. We have so much more to cover, but I think this was a solid 6 weeks of foundation that was laid, including what we will get through tonight. Now I'm gonna do my best to get through as much of this as I can, and we'll just have to pick this up again next time we do School of the Prophetic. All right. So very quickly, I'm going to do some brief review, because last review y'all had me reteaching everything I taught the lesson before. All right, y'all just good like that sometimes. But we're going to do some brief review. Then I'm going to go into some new information. All right. Very quickly, prophetic conduct and integrity is the moral, spiritual, and ministerial standard by which prophets and prophetic believers receive, interpret, deliver, and steward divine information. That's number one. Number two, it is the alignment of character, process, and communication with the holiness of God, the nature of truth, and the edification of the body of Christ. I gave you 2 foundational reasons we needed to establish prophetic conduct and integrity as foundational pillars of our prophetic ministry. Number one, because every ministerial assignment, every ministry demands ethical conduct to uphold and safeguard its sacred purpose. I'll say it again. Every ministry, whether you sing, dance, pray, prophesy, you paint, you sweep, you mop, you ush, you children's, whatever you do, every ministry, listen, demands ethical conduct to uphold and safeguard the sacred purposes of God. You cannot be an usher and think that you have any less ethical responsibility than somebody prophesying. You cannot be a children's church worker and feel like just because I don't work in children's church, it requires less ethical conduct of me than it does those who lead praise and worship. All right. Every ministry demands ethical conduct to uphold and safeguard the sacred purposes of ministry or the sacred purposes of God. You don't want the life you live to contradict the ministry you represent. We don't want to talk about love, and all people get out of us is hate. All right. We don't want to talk about prayer and then the people around us can't pray their way out of a wet paper bag. We don't want to talk about deliverance and everybody is constantly in bondage and nobody is ever experiencing freedom. You know, it's one of my burdens, and I'm not going off on a tangent here, but it's one of my burdens when I see churches with names or descriptions or adjectives in the name, but there's no ministry associated with that name to follow. Why we call Deliverance Tabernacle if ain't nobody been delivered before, ever, at one point, at any point? Why we calling ourselves Evangelistical Center and we don't even have an understanding on what an evangelist really is or what they do? We're confusing evangelism and outreach, and the two are not the same. Why are we calling ourselves y'all thought I was done? Why are we calling ourselves a prayer center and ain't nobody praying? I still don't understand the purposes of having prayer revivals and prayer events, and we do more dancing than praying. I don't understand that. All right, let me move. So there are ethical demands that uphold and safeguard the purposes of ministry and the purposes of God in ministry. And you and I must live according to them. All right. I've given you all that information. So last week, I ended with establishing a profile for 3 manifestations of informational ministry. That's the label I gave them for you. All right. 3 manifestations of informational ministry. Now go to 1 Corinthians 12 very quickly. 1 Corinthians 12. When we view 1 Corinthians 12 in view of the gifts and in view of the scripture and in view of systematic theology, 1 Corinthians 12, that section, verse 4 through 11, is generally surmised or known as, all right, the gifts of the Spirit, the 9 gifts of the Spirit. Even though the word gifts is not in the original text in Corinthians, where it says, when Paul says, I wouldn't have you to be ignorant concerning gifts, he said, I would not have you be ignorant concerning spiritual. Our King James says spiritual gifts, but Paul never used the word gifts, identifying that these are natures of anybody who lives or walks after the Spirit. All right. So 1 Corinthians 12, we get what we systematically know as, or traditionally know as, the 9 gifts of the Spirit. These 9 gifts of the Spirit, and I've taught you this before, Emerge, these 9 gifts of the Spirit are broken down into 3 categories. Number 1 are the revelation gifts, and I'm going to show you this so that you can see where my language is not an offense to 1 Corinthians chapter 12, but I just want to show you what I'm labeling, what I'm identifying, what I'm dealing with differently than the traditional objective of 1 Corinthians 12. All right. So we've got the revelation gifts. This is all traditional. The revelation gifts are comprised of 3 of the gifts of 1 Corinthians 12: word of wisdom, word of knowledge, and discerning of spirits. These are all considered revelational gifts because these gifts reveal something supernaturally. All right. With word of wisdom, with word of knowledge, and the discerning of spirits, the person manifesting or operating in these designations, in these gifts, in these manifestations, would not have or does not normally have access to this supernatural information that they are sharing right now. But because they are using or functioning in one of the revelation gifts, which is word of wisdom, word of knowledge, discerning of spirits, they're able to reach into a realm of knowledge that they would not natively or naturally have access to. Again, the revelation gifts are gifts that reveal something or some things supernaturally. That's category number 1. Category number 2 are the power gifts. And I'm not digging into these tonight. When we go into our series on the gifts, I'll definitely be spending time talking through these. But right now, I'm just jumping through these very quickly so I can get you some new information. Category number 2, the power gifts. Power gifts are as follows: the gift of faith, the gifts of healing, and this is one of my favorites, the working of miracles. I'm going to give them to you again. Power gifts are the gifts of faith, gifts of healing, and the working of miracles. These gifts are considered power gifts because, watch me, just as the revelational gifts or the revelation gifts reveal something supernaturally, these power gifts perform or accomplish something supernaturally. I hope you're taking good notes. So we got the revelation gifts: wisdom, word of knowledge, and the discerning of spirits. Those are revelation gifts. They are revelation gifts because they reveal something supernaturally. All right. Number 2, the power gifts. The power gifts are the gifts of faith, the gift of faith, the gifts of healing, and the working of miracles. These are power gifts because they perform something supernaturally. Again, this is all 1 Corinthians 12. Number 3 are the vocal gifts or the gifts of utterance or the utterance gifts, all right? Vocal gifts, utterance gifts, gifts of utterance. The 3 gifts, because remember I told you 3 sections, 3 apiece, 9 gifts in total. The vocal gifts are prophecy, diverse or different kinds of tongues, and then number 3 is the interpretation of tongues. Again, vocal gifts, utterance gifts, gifts of utterance. These vocal gifts are vocal gifts because they say something supernaturally or communicate something supernaturally. All right, I'll go through them again. Number one, revelation gifts. The revelation gifts reveal something supernaturally. These revelation gifts are the word of wisdom, word of knowledge, and the discerning of spirits. Power gifts, section 2, number 2. Power gifts perform something supernaturally. Now, this is again, these are believer level manifestations. So this is something you're going to need to work into your consistent language, your consistent study, your consistent principles. These are things you need to know, like John 3:16. All right. And as much as you are saved by grace through faith, you need to know these as well. These are foundational. Foundational. All right. Revelation gifts, power gifts, gifts that perform supernatural faith, gifts of healing, working of miracles. Number 3. Vocal gifts, gifts of utterance. Vocal gifts say something supernaturally. This is prophecy, diverse or different kinds of tongues, and the interpretation of tongues. All right, now again, if you're commenting and chatting and questioning in the chat and I can't see your questions, please don't feel don't feel no ways tied. You come too far from where you started from. Don't be discouraged. Just make sure you get the question to one of our leaders and they'll get it to me and I'll be able to answer it offline or answer it in another setting. All right. All right. So you got revelation gifts, power gifts, vocal gifts. All right. I wanted to give you the traditional format of 1 Corinthians 12 because from those 9 gifts, I've created another category that kind of blends 2 different categories, and it's specifically about the prophetic, and it's what I call informational ministry. All right, informational ministry are the 3 main streams of information or informational ministry that come from the Spirit of God. Those 3 main ways are the word of wisdom, the word of knowledge, and prophecy. Those are informational ministries. And the reason I call them informational ministries is because all 3 of these informational streams can work on their own without one or the other. You can have prophetic or predictive or futuristic information detached from the word of knowledge, detached from the word of wisdom. You can have the word of wisdom detached from prophecy, detached from word of knowledge. Same thing with word of knowledge. You can have the word of knowledge detached from prophecy and detached from the word of wisdom. And I'm calling them informational ministries because all 3 of them reveal something supernatural. They reveal information supernaturally. All right. Not included in these informational ministries are others that we won't cover in this particular session, like diverse kinds of tongues or interpretation of tongues. These are the main 3 that I wanted to put my hand on tonight for this particular prophetic understanding. All right, let's talk through these very quickly. These 3 operations, these 3 informational ministries are not limited to the office of the prophet. We talked about that last week. But they are available to all believers who walk in the Spirit and are committed to hearing the voice of God. Word of knowledge, word of wisdom, and prophecy are all available to all believers and do not denote or identify that a person carries or is functioning in the office of a prophet. I hope that makes sense. Go to 1 Corinthians chapter 12 very quickly. I'm going to read and then we're going to move. Because I still have some content that I need to give you tonight, not just revelation. 1 Corinthians 12. Go to verse number 4 real quick. 1 Corinthians 12, verse number 4. Now there are diversities of gifts, but the same Spirit. And there are differences of administrations, but the same Lord. And there are diversities of operations, but it is the same God which worketh all in all. But the manifestation of the Spirit is given to every man to profit withal. For to one is given by the Spirit the word of wisdom, to another the word of knowledge by the same Spirit, to another faith by the same Spirit, to another the gifts of healing by the same Spirit, to another the working of miracles, to another prophecy, to another discerning of spirits, to another diverse kinds of tongues, to another the interpretation of tongues. Verse 11, but all these worketh that one and the selfsame Spirit, dividing to every man severally as he will. All right, so these informational streams that transmit in the intel or the information of heaven to the earth, again, isolated. These are not manifestations of the office of the prophet. These are the manifestations of the Spirit given to every believer for the profitability of the whole body. Did you just see that with me in 1 Corinthians 12? The purpose of the gifts of 1 Corinthians 12 are for the purpose of the entire body. The entire body benefits from the manifestation of these 9 gifts that we just talked through. All right, which brings me to our first informational ministry that I'm going to deal with tonight, and that is the word of knowledge. All right, if you're taking notes, write that down, the word of knowledge. All of these informational ministries, these main three that I'm going to talk about tonight, play a part in prophetic revelation, in the revelation of the word of the Lord, right? Because the word of the Lord can contain word of knowledge, can contain word of wisdom, can contain prophecy, or it can be the word of wisdom only. All right, the word of the Lord can be prophecy only. The word of the Lord can be word of knowledge only. But the reason that it's the word of the Lord is basically because it's what the Lord said. All right. So we've got to see all 3 of these as different streams of informational ministry, because all supernatural information is not prophecy. And we're going to talk through that here in just a moment. All right. First thing we're dealing with is the word of knowledge. Your very basic working definition is this: it is information which is divinely revealed about something from the past or the present. It is information which is divinely revealed about something from the past or the present. The word of knowledge is any information that can be proven in the now. All right, let me give you a technical definition. The word of knowledge is divine insight, facts, information or realities that are past or present, which are not naturally known by the speaker. I said again, the word of knowledge is divine insight, facts, information or realities that are past or present, which are not naturally known by the speaker. The way the word of knowledge works is the spirit of the word of knowledge will share a name with me. I don't naturally know that name. You know I don't know that name. I know I don't know that name. So when I'm sharing this name with you, the goal is to convince you through this supernatural channel of information that the God that I represent is actually talking to you. Does that make sense? We're going to go through this a little bit more. The goal of the word of knowledge is not to be impressive. The goal of the word of knowledge is to bait a heart into belief. By the time we get through going through the year, the date, the month, the time, the location, the city, the scent, the attire, and all of those details that are known by the person receiving the word, but not by the person speaking it, and you are aware that I don't know this information. I wasn't there when you were 5. You weren't there when that person was 17. You weren't there when they were, in this particular year. For in some instances, you may not have even been born in that time frame. So these are verifiers that this information is supernatural. All right? Because I don't know it. You know I don't know it, but this is information that you are aware of. The danger here is that most people get so caught up on the accuracy and the details of the word of knowledge that we don't even wait or listen to what God is saying beyond that, because we were impressed with details and information. Again, the word of knowledge is a spirit. It has permission to move and roam and communicate as it will. It does not have to be attached to prophecy, does not have to be attached to the word of wisdom, does not have to be attached to the word of the Lord. So there are many instances where I know in our prophetic circles and things of that sort in our church, we make jokes. Oh, I'm powerful. Or I knew that. Or I just seen that. Or I just heard that. That's low level word of knowledge. It does not make you an officer. It does not accentuate your gift in any high level capacity. The word, if we were in person, I was talking to a different group, I would say the word of knowledge just runs its mouth. This information is available, you understand. That's why psychics and wizards, they have access to the same type of information that is known. They have familiar spirits that bait and source information and stalkers and things of that sort that garner information from them so that when they release their prophetic words, they have accurate information attached to it as well. So simply having the knowledge is not enough. Simply knowing details about a situation is not enough. I knew that this person was doing da 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 da. Yes, that's a manifestation of a spirit available to all believers. And the reason we have to bring these down to the lowest common denominator is because people are using believer level markers as signs of an office or an official capacity. And you don't even have to be prophesying to have access to the word of knowledge. Does that make sense? Doctors move in the word of knowledge. When they're able to listen to a diagnosis and da 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 da, and they're able to pinpoint exactly where the issue is, that's a manifestation of the word of knowledge. People who move in healing, all right, divine healing, the gifts of healing. 1 Corinthians 12 talks about the gifts of healing. One of the manifestations of the gifts of healing is through the word of knowledge. We're standing in a room. So I was on a Zoom the other last week ministering, and I felt somebody struggling with tendonitis, frozen shoulder, different ailments in the body. When those things show up and people are really dealing with these issues, this is not just popcorn random, let's call random diseases. This is a manifestation of the word of knowledge at work. Does that make sense? Because it is something that is known, unnaturally known by the speaker. I'm not a medical doctor. I've not studied to know that based on the way you're favoring your arm or favoring your shoulder, it reveals a specific type of situation in your body or whatever the case may be. So if we're moving and healing, that's a manifestation of the word of knowledge. Same thing with deliverance. The ministry of deliverance, the casting out of devils. It's a manifestation of both word of knowledge and the discerning of spirits, because you got to know what you're dealing with. If a person has been bound with the spirit of perversion since they were 7, you just knowing that it's the spirit of perversion may not necessarily uproot or deal with that demonic education that I can't wait to teach on deliverance. That educational system that is hiding there, right? So the word of knowledge is going to give you specific details to unearth and unlodge that situation. At 7, you were introduced to sexual perversion by the men in your family. Now the specificity of that detail reaches to the specificity of that occurrence. Does that make sense? And it unlodges its power and authority. So we don't move in the word of knowledge just to be spooky. We don't move in the word of knowledge and details and all that kind of stuff just so that we can appear, powerful. But we move in the ministry or the informational ministry of the word of knowledge because God is confronting a truth or God is confronting a circumstance or an issue that is hidden behind a situation that this person is aware of, that the speaker is not aware of. And watch this. The fact that I don't know ministers supernaturally to you because now you're able to determine that the God that's speaking to me is a true God. That's not me making it up. Go to 1 Corinthians 14 real quick. 1 Corinthians 14. And go to verse number 24 because I want to show you something of the scriptures. I've heard some damnable heresy that the only reason we use the word of knowledge is to be impressive. The devil is a liar. The kingdom of God doesn't need to be impressive. The goal of us ministering through the word of knowledge is 1 Corinthians 14 right here. I'm giving it to you in the scriptures. Go to verse 24. But if all prophesy, and here come in one that believeth not, or one unlearned, he is convicted of all, he is judged of all. Verse 25. And thus the secrets of his heart are made manifest, And so falling down on his face, he will worship God and report that God is in you of a truth. All 1 Corinthians 14 is saying is if somebody Paul is having conversation about tongues versus prophecy, and he's saying, I would that all God's people will prophesy. I want everybody to prophesy, because if a person comes in and they're unlearned or uninstructed, they're not familiar with our church environment, but they hear you prophesy to them, and the secrets, the hidden things of their heart are uncovered. The known things of their heart are uncovered. That informational portion of their life that they've not shared with anybody else, but they are aware of the information. If they come into your service and you prophesy to them, or you release the word of the Lord to them, and the word of knowledge is made manifest, Paul says the results of that is the heart is laid bare. This person is convicted of all, and they testify of truth. The God you serve is the real God. The real God is amongst you, because he recognizes there's no way you should have known that other than the fact that this came directly out of my heart. And the God who spoke to you is the one that I'm going to serve as God. So the word of knowledge has a purpose. It's not pointless. It's not for impression. We often move in the word of knowledge to soften the heart to a greater reality of God. One of the reasons we spend so much time, or one of the reasons that mature prophetic voices spend time in the word of knowledge, is to soften a person's heart, to let them know God really is talking about you, or really is talking to you. The goal is not, I'm going to tell you your name, tell your address just to say God's going to bless you. No, I'm going to tell you your name, tell your address to let you know that these are not random muddlings and concerns that come out of nowhere. This comes directly from the God who's going to minister to this part of your life and your story. Does that make sense? All right, go with me real quick to John chapter number 4. Because I want to show you something. John 4. Now, we could do this all night because the scriptures are replete with proof of the manifestation of the ministry of word of knowledge. All right, go to John 4. Go to verse 16. You already know what's going on. Woman at the well. Verse 16 says this: Jesus said unto her, Go call thy husband and come hither. The woman answered and said, I have no husband. Jesus said unto her, Thou hast well said, I have no husband, for thou hast had 5 husbands, and he whom thou hast now is not thy husband. In that saidest thou truly. All right. Jesus never met this woman. They never met in the market before. She ain't where he from. They don't know each other. Here Jesus is in a conversation with this woman and moves in the word of knowledge. At the moment he moves in the word of knowledge, her heart is immediately convicted. And watch me. The bait for her to get the city to come see him was, she said, come see a man that told me all I'd ever done. Here we see the ministry of the word of knowledge moving. And the information was something she knew that Jesus didn't know naturally. Does that make sense? He wins her heart into belief. She goes and tells the city. The city comes back to see Jesus, and now lives are changed because of that. All right. I just want to show you biblical examples of the word of knowledge. Same thing with when I first talked about purity in the prophetic. Elisha and Gehazi. Gehazi left after Naaman left from in front of Elisha, and Gehazi went and said, hey, my master told me to bring all this stuff back. Elisha didn't go with Gehazi. He stayed there in the house. But when Gehazi came back, Elisha knew exactly what Gehazi had done. It was a manifestation of the word of knowledge. Hope that's making sense. When we move in the word of knowledge, again, one of the goals of it is to bait the heart into belief that God is really having this supernatural conversation with me and about me. Does that make sense? All right. Let me move on, because we can keep going through that word of knowledge. Let's go to the word of wisdom. Let's go to the word of wisdom. Right before we do, I'm going to give you this last one in word of knowledge, then I'm going to word of wisdom. I know I just said that, but I want to give you this. John chapter 9. John chapter 9. You don't have to read it. Just write it down, nightly devotion, John chapter 9, verse 1 through 3. All right, I'm going to read it real quick. And Jesus passed by. He saw a man which was blind from his birth. And watch this. He was blind from his birth. And his disciples asked him, Master, saying, Master, who did sin, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Jesus answered, Neither hath this man sinned nor his parents, but that the works of God should be made manifest in him. All right. Jesus is passing by. This man is at the gate. He's blind, can't see. And the disciples asked him, Jesus, who sinned, this man or his parents? The Bible says Jesus responded to them and said, neither. The reason this situation is this way is so that God could get the glory out of this and the power of God will be made manifest in this. All right. Here's what I want to show you. Here's why I had to go to John 9. Number one, the disciples would be aware that Jesus doesn't know this man. They travel with him. They move back and forth in the earth with him. So they know, Jesus, you don't know this guy. Number two, not only do they know Jesus unaware of him, they've seen him move in so much word of knowledge. They are confident that when they ask him this question about a man that they are aware he doesn't know, they are fully confident that he's going to give them an answer. That's number two, because they've experienced him moving word of knowledge before. So this is a common occurrence with Jesus. Number three, Jesus responds sharply. He says, neither one. It's not the man or his parents. Without knowing the man, without having intel on his history, his family, where he came from, without ever calling his name, he knew exactly what was going on in this man's life and exactly where this blindness came from and the goal behind it. That is a biblical manifestation of the word of knowledge. Hope that makes sense. Hope you see that through the lens of the scriptures. All right, let's go to the word of wisdom. It's 7:36 and I'm moving in good time. This is really good time. All right, the word of wisdom. Word of wisdom. Still 1 Corinthians chapter 12. The word of wisdom, simple definition, is the intelligence of God about a matter. That's the simple one. The intelligence of God about a matter. The word of wisdom is the supernatural impartation of divine counsel, strategy, or solutions regarding future events. All right. It is the realm of the intelligence of God, the realm of the mind of Christ, and it is revealed through instruction, strategy, or divine timing. Again, the word of wisdom, in short, is the intelligence of God about a matter. We're not going to go there. Go to, here's what you do. Write down Genesis chapter 41. Genesis 41. And write down verse 33 through 36. And read it in your nightly devotion. All right. Pharaoh set Joseph over the land during a period of famine, when the land was about to go into famine, when Egypt was about to go into famine. And Joseph's wisdom that came from the Lord was, we need to save in the 7 years of plenty so that we will have resources in the 7 years of famine. That was not a prophetic instruction from God to Joseph and from Joseph to Pharaoh. That was, watch me, Joseph reaching into the realm of the intelligence of God about a matter and stationing that intelligence and that instruction and that strategy next to what he got from God to safeguard it for the future. I'll give it to you again. John chapter number 8. You'll have to turn there, verse 1 through 11. It's a lot of reading. They catch this woman in adultery. They drag her and bring her to Jesus. Instead of Jesus trying to figure out what to do, instead of saying to this woman, you actually didn't do anything wrong, instead of killing this woman in front of this angry mob, the Bible says Jesus stooped down, he scribbled something in the dirt, and then he moves in the manifestation of the word of wisdom. He says, any of you without sin, cast the first stone. God did not come and tell him, this is the strategy you need to employ. God did not come tell him, hey, this is what you need to do to get them up off of her. He reached into the realm of the intelligence of God. I hope that makes sense. We see one of the manifestations of the word of wisdom a lot concerning business, contracts, building, education, money, finances. Because while it may not be what God has said directly, it is still a realm, watch me, of information that is supernaturally received because it is the intelligence of God about that situation. Don't build here, build there. Don't buy this instead. Don't offer it for this amount of money, offer it for this amount of money. God didn't speak these things specifically, but they come out of the registry of God's intelligence concerning whatever the situation is. Does that make sense? The word of wisdom preserves nations, businesses, ministries, and individuals. Watch me. It will provide for you a blueprint of stewardship, survival, and supernatural success. By the time there is a manifestation of the word of wisdom, when it does show up, it is the key to prophetic sustainability. The word of the Lord said to build this church. The word of wisdom says we need to build it like this. Does that make sense? The word of wisdom, again, because it is the spirit of the word of wisdom, it has the freedom to move in and out of the earth the way it will, which is why we need to identify that there is a difference between the spirit of the word of wisdom and the wisdom of men. Your big mama may have great wisdom as a grandmother, but that does not make it the spirit of wisdom. The spirit of wisdom is the intelligence of God, not the intelligence of men. When Solomon decides, when those two women bring the baby to him, one saying she rolled over and killed her son, and now she wants mine, and the other one saying, this is my baby. It was not the wisdom of men that told Solomon, hey, cut this baby in half. That was supernatural wisdom for Solomon to decide, well, the one who really is the mother is going to want to save the life of this child more than she's going to want to have a baby. That's the manifestation of God's wisdom, God's intelligence about the matter. Because you know how we give advice. I'm going to let this go. You know how we give da-da-da-da-da-da. But that's what I would do if I were you. That's how we safeguard ourselves from giving people bad advice. However, the spirit of the word of wisdom doesn't move like that. The spirit of the word of wisdom is precise. It is so precise, it will make you think it itself is prophecy. When the son of the prophet was felling a tree and the axe head fell into the water. I'll give you an example. Axe head fell into the water. Elijah didn't go consult God. Elisha didn't go consult God and say, hey, God, what should we do about this? He reached into the intelligence of God. Does that make sense? And he provided the man a solution. This is what you need to do. Me and my sons and daughters, and it really manifests strong for those who are submitted to my voice. Now, I can't tell you about for everybody else. I'm talking about for those who are connected and submitted to my voice. I could go through countless conversations. Pastor Shamari, Pastor Honor, they will get ready to buy a house in another state. Hey, this is what we want to do. This is what we feel like. What do you think we ought to do? All right. My answer is always going to be this. Let me sit with it. I need to hear what the spirit of wisdom is saying. I want to know. Is there a word from the Lord? Or is the spirit of wisdom going to give counsel concerning this? Going to give strategy concerning this? Going to give insight or intel concerning this? Especially for those of you that move in stocks and in the stock market, you need to pray for the ministry of the spirit of the word of wisdom. It'll tell you when to buy, when to sell, when to get in, when to get out. I won't go into my other thoughts about that. But yes, you need access to the spirit of wisdom because it will guide your business decisions. If you've been buying for the last 6 months and the spirit of wisdom shows up and says, don't make a purchase for the next 6 months, that's something out of the intelligence of God that knows intel about the future that you don't know. I can't tell you how many people have come to me, hey, I'm getting ready to go back to school. What degree program should I choose? These are the 3 that are before me. This is the one you need to choose. That's a manifestation of the spirit of the word of wisdom. It's the intelligence of God about the future. Does that make sense? And then something ended up happening later on in the degree program where it proves fruitful. Okay, this is actually why I needed to take this. Well, that wasn't the prophecy in the reason I told you to choose this. But because the spirit of the word of wisdom, again, is intelligence and intel from the future about the future, it will guide your decision making as it undergirds the word of the Lord. I hope that makes sense. All right. So the word of wisdom, or the spirit of the word of wisdom, is supernatural and a divine response. And again, it is the intelligence of God around the matter. And what it will allow you to do is gain insight on the mind of God about it once you already have his instruction concerning it. All right. Next, well, it's 7:45. I'm in good time because I got a couple other things to cover under here. This leads us to prophecy. Prophecy. This is one of the nights I wish we was on Zoom so I could see your faces and make sure you're taking good notes. Prophecy is the declaration or revelation of a divine message concerning the future. I'm going to say it again because I want to keep it as simple as possible for where I'm about to go. Prophecy is the declaration or revelation of a divine message concerning the future. It is predictive in nature. It can be spoken, written, dreamt, heard, seen in a vision. It may come literally, figuratively, or symbolically. Prophecy, in its lowest form, is simply predictive. Somebody's throwing a dice, you're going to get a 6. They get a 6, you predict it accurately. That's low level. And the reason we've got to go through these definitions is because some of this stuff we call prophecy is not really prophecy. Some of it's the spirit of happenstance and coincidence. Oh. God didn't say that. You made that up. God didn't say that. You studied a pattern and a system. That's just as accurate as tomorrow being Thursday. Duh. It's Bryson, I don't know if can you turn me up any more on the stream? Prophecy at its core, again, is predictive in nature, and it is not an exclusive manifestation of the voice of God. Say it again. Prophecy at its core is predictive in nature, and it is not an exclusive manifestation of the voice of God. Other deities have prophetic voices that prophesy their words. I almost said something, but I'm going to leave y'all alone tonight. Some of these people call themselves prophets are prophets, but they're prophets of the God that they've given their ear to and sold their soul to. All right. As a prophet, you are a spokesperson of the God you speak on behalf of. The literal definition means to speak for or declare in advance on behalf of someone. So it's possible for you, I'm coming, to be a prophet of your dead grandmother because you speak on behalf of her. It's possible to be a prophet of a rising phoenix and a falling sun, or whatever the names are, because that's who you've given your ear to. Hold on, take a deep breath. It's possible to be a prophet of your unhealed trauma, because you can prophesy in the name of your trauma and your triggers and your unhealed past. It's possible to be the prophet of multiple gods because you got a pantheon of them sitting on your heart, each giving you a different instruction to glorify itself. So prophecy in and of itself is not an exclusive manifestation of the voice of God. But all deities with prophets or spokespersons or oracles or whatever they call them speak to that which will speak for them. Does that make sense? All right. And just because you prophesy, even on behalf of Yahweh, does not make you a prophet. Ask me why. Because there was a rooster who prophesied to Peter, and it didn't make the rooster a prophet. Jesus said, this thing gonna crow 3 times, and by the third time it crow, you're gonna know you denied me. What happened? That rooster prophesied 3 different times. He wasn't a prophet. That donkey in the story of Balaam and Balak kept the prophet alive. And when the prophet said, why you keep dashing my leg against this brick wall? What's up? He's giving to kill the donkey. Donkey said, chill, I'm keeping you alive. If I had gone that way, the angel would have killed you. Surely that was the word of the Lord, because he would have died. Didn't make that donkey a prophet. So prophesying does not make one a prophet. There's a manifestation of the Spirit given to all believers. You can be a prophet if you are the spokesman, the official spokesman of a deity. All right. Which leads me to a couple of things. Why we prophesy. There are 3 main reasons we prophesy. I have so much grief around even reading this text right now. I don't even want to. 1 Corinthians 14. Why do we prophesy? We prophesy to edify, exhort, and comfort. That's the reason we prophesy. To edify, exhort, and comfort. That's my first answer. That's 1 Corinthians 14:3. Why do we prophesy? Number 2, to reveal the heart and bring conviction. 1 Corinthians 14:25. I already gave you that. All right. So number 1, to edify, exhort, and comfort. Number 2, to reveal the heart and bring conviction. Third reason we prophesy, to activate gifts and callings. 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 14. You already know what it says. Neglect not the gift which is given thee, which is in thee, which is given thee by prophecy. All right. We see prophecy, and prophesying imparts gifts and graces for ministries. It awakens dormant callings and unveils purposes. So we see 3 main reasons we prophesy: to edify, exhort, and comfort, to reveal the heart and bring conviction, and to activate gifts and callings. I'm almost where I need to be. I'm almost done, seriously. Number 2, how do we prophesy? We prophesy by decoding divine information through your 5 senses. Give me a minute. God's voice comes from the language of eternity, because God's not a human. He doesn't speak English. He doesn't speak Japanese, because he's not bound to the language of time. He speaks the language of eternity. And because that's the case, it must be translated or interpreted into human language. So we take God's divine information and we decode it through our 5 senses. I heard the Lord say. The Lord showed me. I smelled. I tasted. I felt. Any of those things, all right? Your sight, your sound, your touch, your smell, your taste. The prophetic word can be decoded through all of those avenues. That is the how, all right? Number 3, when do we prophesy? We prophesy only when God speaks. Not for the purposes of being impressive, not for the purposes of manipulating or getting our way or gaining our own favors, but we prophesy only when God speaks. Prophecy is not born of impulse or emotional stirring, but it must originate from the voice of God. It should also be released under the proper protocols and accountability. We should only prophesy when God speaks. That's the only time. Number 4, where do we prophesy? This one is simple, but it also can be complex. Where do we prophesy? The short answer is anywhere. The long answer is anywhere, but not without structure or protocol. Though the prophetic, because it is a spirit-based experience, though the prophetic can be operated anywhere, the ideal space needs to be under spiritual oversight, where the word can be judged, and where people are mature enough to steward the word. There's no need for you to prophesy the word of, I don't even want to go into examples because you understand what I'm saying. The word of knowledge shows up real strong in my examples. I'll be preaching something or teaching something and going to an example, and then more than likely one of the pastors will pull me to the back later, like, "Did you know that?" I'm like, "No, I didn't know that." They'll say, "Well, this is exactly what happened," and da 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 da. So sometimes I stay away from examples because sometimes they be prophetic and y'all feel like folk be talking about you and they really don't be. God be talking about you. Hold my seat. He ready right now. You almost took me up before your very eyes, but you weren't ready to watch me go. So where do we prophesy? Anywhere, but not without structure. All right. Here we go. Number 5. Who can prophesy? This is a good one. All spirit-filled believers can prophesy. 1 Corinthians 14. For ye all may prophesy one by one, that all may learn and all may be comforted. However, while we all can and all should prophesy, or all may prophesy, the next question is who should prophesy? All right, here we go. The who should prophesy. The who should of prophesying should be those who are prophetically trained and educated, who can manage and guard all of the prophetic responsibilities. Untrained individuals should refrain from prophesying outside of environments where a word can be judged and held accountable. If you just got enrolled in Prophetic 101 yesterday, you shouldn't be at your job. Oh, I just can't hold this in. I'm just so full. I'm just bubbling over right now. Hold the word. Get it judged by somebody at the church. Somebody, am I making sense? Somebody who can measure that word, judge that word. Because some of y'all done messed a whole lot of people's lives up with on the job training prophecies. You prophesying you had a sub late last night, and I just woke up with this on my mind. That need to be judged first. So the who should of prophecy, those who've been properly trained and educated, and if you're untrained, uneducated, do it in an environment where your work can be judged and weighed, and where training can take place. Does that make sense? Last 2. Why is prophecy necessary? Why is prophecy necessary? Prophecy is necessary because it is the voice of God to his creation. Without prophecy, the will of God would remain concealed. Prophecy discloses the divine counsel of God, preserves destiny, and partners with heaven to administrate God's agenda in the earth. That's why prophecy is necessary. It's how God communicates with creation. It's how God reveals the future to his creation. All right? Lastly, it's 7:59. I'm so glad we're here. This is the last point. What does prophecy do? What does prophecy do? Very quick. Number 1, it creates. Number 2, it starts new processes. Number 3, it halts or interrupts patterns or systems. And number 4, it brings correction. It creates, it starts new processes, it halts or interrupts patterns, it brings correction, and then here's the last one. It reveals the mind, will, and counsel of God. What does prophecy do? It creates. Psalms 33:6, write it down. By the word of the Lord were the heavens made. All right. What does prophecy do? It starts a new process, or starts a new process. Isaiah 43:19. Behold, I will do a new thing. Now it shall spring forth. You read the rest of it. All right. It halts or interrupts patterns. Yet 40 days and Nineveh shall be overthrown. That's Jonah 3:4. Read the whole thing in your context. Number 4, it brings correction. Wherefore hast thou despised the commandment of the Lord? That's 2 Samuel chapter 12, 7 through 9. Read it for the entire context. Lastly, it reveals the mind, will, and counsel of God. Isaiah 40, verse 13 says, who hath directed the Spirit of the Lord, or being his counselor, who has taught him? Now that reveals the mind of God, the will of God, or the intention of God through Isaiah 40 and 13. All right, I've gotten all of this content out. To be a prophetic believer, to be prophetic, to be a prophesier, is to literally translate eternity into time. Through the word of knowledge, through the word of prophecy, through the word of wisdom, through prophetic types, prophetic dances, prophetic songs, all those different prophetic ways. Our goal is to translate eternity into time so that creation comes into contact with its creator. All right. I hope this series has been full for you. I hope this series has been clear. I hope it's been concise. And I hope it's been fruitful for your prophetic journey and your prophetic understanding. All right. Thank y'all so much for hanging out with us. We'll be right back, same time, same place, next week, next Wednesday for our midweek experience. And we should be beginning a new series. And we'll talk about all of that as it relates to our new series next week.